Oh, sorry, I think. So let me just do that. Yes. Sorry, we have to stop a little,
That's
but
recording. It's recording.
yes,
Yeah.
it's recording.
Yes.
Okay, so could you just make me the co-host? I made you host, yes, because I have to share. Yes, so I was saying it's a 1 year, and we have presented programs. So 1 year, I think, with no repetition. I
No.
think with no repetition.
No.
Yes, have we repeated any?
No.
I don't think
I
we
don't
did,
think so.
yes. So we have to thank God for supplying us with topics week after week. And as we go into December, we're gonna have some very Christmassy end of year kinds of topics, starting next week with one that we'll announce at the end of the program, because you know the girls are going to be going out to their parties and so on in December. And so we'll follow up from our guest this evening and continue with some of the issues that he would be discussing with us. So 5 little ducks went out one day, over the hill and far away. Mother duck said quack, 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 quack. And 4 little ducks came running back. And that little rhyme continues. In fact, it's a song. So the next day, Mother duck only sent out 4 because one didn't come back from the day before. And then the next day it was 3, and the next day 2, and next day 1. And eventually no ducks. When she said quack, 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 no ducks came running back. Children love this song. Teachers use it to help children count backwards from 5. But what did Mother Duck really do? Why did she keep sending her ducklings out, knowing that every day one would go missing? Why did she let them go? Parents, we have to protect our children. Our children are under attack. And this evening, Inspector Wayne Stanley is going to share with us attacks on our children. Welcome, Inspector. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. We know that you're a busy, busy, busy man, and you have many serious issues to deal with, but you keep coming and you keep helping us, and we're grateful to you for that.
Thank you very much. A pleasant good afternoon to you all. It's always a pleasure to be in this forum on a Wednesday night. It's unfortunate that I cannot make all Wednesdays because I have some other commitments work-wise, and recently I would have been transferred to the gang unit.
Oh.
And when I was transferred there, some people asked me to come and do something for them in St. Madeleine with the youths. And this is where attacks on children were born. And after I did it, I met with some of the parents, and they were shocked. They were in awe with some of the information that they were privy to. And from that, I was invited to the San Juan North Government School to do something there with the children there. And I did something with the teachers, sensitizing them first, and then I had to move on to the parents. And from there, I realized the importance of this topic, because what has been happening with all the gang violence that has been taking place, I am seeing in the schools where a number of young men, boys and girls, have been recruited into the gangs. And it's a very scary situation. So right now I'm on a mission to not just arrest persons for gangs or gang-related activity, but I'm trying to reduce the recruitment process into the gangs, because we have started to lose a number of our young children to gang violence, drugs, prostitution, and all different forms of criminal activity. And the only good thing is that we have a lot of praying people in this country that continues to pray for our children. And I know that you all are persons of that caliber. So I want to urge you to continue to pray for our children of this nation. I know that this topic might be a bit off because of the fact that I think this week is the first week of the 16 days of activism, for women and girls, the Spotlight Initiative. I was also invited to attend something with them today, but I had to go to Shogunas to make another presentation on gangs to a number of people, because gangs seem to be something of a bother to people in this country. So again, I want to thank you for allowing me time and time again on this platform to share with you some of the information. Hopefully, there's a number of parents in this audience that will take away something from tonight's presentation.
Yes, Inspector, thank you for coming, and you can go right into your presentation. We are all eager to learn from you. It's always so informative.
The only thing, I do not have presenter rights to move the presentation forward. Is the only thing. So you all may have to assist.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
Second?
Dr. Ward.
Okay, I was saying you can let me know when you would like to move it, but do you have the
I'm ready.
presentation on your device, Inspector?
Yeah, I could put it up on my device.
But I can also move it for you.
Yeah, you move it for me, it'll be better. Yeah. So this attacks on our children was shared with a large church group, and it's geared towards making persons aware of some of the challenges our children face. Sure, I took these two the Bible. Children are a gift from the Lord. They are a reward from Him. Psalm 127:3. And the other one comes from the book of Proverbs. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he gets old, he will not depart from it. Proverbs 22:6. This is a quote I took from my grandfather. He was a bishop at his church. He's from Tobago as well, too. His name is Carlton Daniel. He left me with this quote: how you live spiritually will determine how you live carnally. And I was told that as a little boy, so it never left me. All right. So attacks on our children. Why are they being attacked? Our children are being attacked because of their purity, their innocence, their lack of knowledge, and their simple-mindedness. Who is attacking them? Gang leaders. I stop the list. Drug dealers, pedophiles, their peers, and the bullies at school. All right, so why are these attacks successful? Of lately, we are seeing a disconnect from core family values. And because of that, a number of children feel isolated and alone, and they desire a sense of belonging. And these make these serious attacks successful on our kids. So if we continue to neglect them or ignore them, they can disconnect from you, which then will lead to a reconnection elsewhere. In other words, if parents on the whole do not pay attention to the children's needs, a bit of emotion and care, what will happen is that they will seek that love and attention elsewhere. Recently, we came across a situation where a 17-year-old had lost a firearm that a so-called gang leader had given to him. And he was frightened and concerned about his safety and his life because he knew that the loss of this weapon has severe consequences. So what was strange is that the so-called leader would have told him, it's okay, it's just an item. You're more important than the item. And that simple sign of care and empathy would have boosted that young man's loyalty to the leader. And that is a very concerning issue for us. So they are using some of the soft skills on the children that is void in the children's life from the parents. Hence, once you neglect them or ignore them, there'll be a disconnection and they'll lead to a reconnection as well. Next slide, Ms. Ward. How do we stop these attacks? 1, avoid violence and unregulated behavior in the presence of children at home. Because when children are exposed to violence and disruptive behavior at the home, they experience a type of trauma which is identified as transgenerational or intergenerational trauma, which is often revealed when the child becomes an adult because he or she acts out the experience they would have gone through growing up. And we are seeing a lot of this with some of the young people, even at schools. They are easily angered, and when they are easily angered, they resort to serious violence. If we want to have a future with these young people, we need to spend more time and invest in them. I remember telling one of the teachers at the school that I for one is not really supportive of expulsion from schools, because when the young children are expelled from schools, what happens next is that they lose total interest in school. And they become more vulnerable to gang membership when that happens. And it's very difficult to bring them back on track. So I told them, if we could write something to the Ministry of Education, possibly, to get vocational or something called alternative school, because expulsion just drives them into the next phase of the life that has serious consequences. Next slide. How do we stop these attacks continue? Number two, we need to keep adult conversations away from children. Far too often, a number of adults are engaging in conversations in the presence of children, whether it be political issues, issues with the police, issues with the neighbor, issues with the teachers, or internal conflict within the family, husband and wife, and so on. These type of conversations should be away from the children. Number three, do not expose them to adult activities. You have children going to school who are far more educated in certain areas that they are not ready for. And some of them are not ready for the responsibility of having children. And based on the information that they have, based on what they are seeing in the homes, based on the conversations that is being held in their presence, they are ready to try adult activities. 4, don't encourage them to drink or smoke. We have 10-year-olds and 11-year-olds who are seen with cigarettes trying out amongst adults, uncertain whether they are parents or not. And you see from time to time little TikTok videos of these things taking place. Thankfully, we have a very aggressive child protection unit that once such videos surfaces, you have an aggressive approach to locate the parents who are involved in these activities. The drinking as well, you know, children are being offered small sips of puncheon and Monster. And people must often remember that these children are still developing. And the experts will tell you that a child mind is not fully developed until it has reached 25. So if the children at age 11, 12, and 13 respectively are drinking and smoking, it could have some serious consequences for them in the future. Do not engage in illegal activities of any kind in their presence. Whether it's cheating on your taxes, whether it may be trying to create counterfeit money. Once you practice these things in the presence of children, they think it's something that is acceptable, and then they eventually become better experts at it. So if parents have some illegal activity going on, do not make the children successors of such activities. 6, if you have issues in the workplace, avoid venting when they are present. Many times you have parents who may not be satisfied with a colleague or a situation at work. And in the car, when they're on their way home, they may get a phone call, and the car itself has the device where you have the hands-free device. They could talk freely and openly to persons without holding device, and the children are on their way from school as well, listening to that adult conversation, hearing the parents respond to another colleague over a work-related issue. The child remains quiet, but the child is absorbing every content of that conversation, and that too causes the child to act out in the school. Number 7, do not expose them to movies with violent or sexual content. We have parents sitting with their 13 and their 14-year-old engaging in these acts that have now become a bit of a taboo in the schools during their discussion of what they would have seen and what they know now. Slide. Next slide. All right, so correct. Yeah. Go back to the other one. My fault. Yes, right. So this is one of my. This one is very important to me. How to tell if your child is being influenced by a gang. And like I said earlier on, there are a number of young children, both boys and girls, 17, 16-year-old. Recently, 16 or 17-year-old was killed in Bonnier. And when you look at some of the, it was rather unfortunate and sad to see, a young teenager who haven't yet started to live killed because of gang violence. So we are asking parents to be on the lookout for some of these things. Always, once you see the child always talking about there's a little typo there, the gang leader, in a positive way, you realize that he is seeing the gang leader as a good role model to follow, and that's a sign that he's being influenced. He or she may have intimate details of gang activity in his area. That means he is very close to the gang. They are sharing information with him. He may be in the midst of certain discussions and they are listening, and he's listening to them attentively. And there's a relationship developing. There's a lot of trusting and bonding that is taking place. Loves listening to gangster music. For us, it's Trinidad, or the Jamaicans have now dubbed it murder music. And I have looked at the content of some of these videos on YouTube that have been posted with these local gangster music, and I want to employ some of you to take a look at them, and you will see, what our children are being exposed to. I have started having conversations about this music, and hopefully I could get an ear from somebody in authority to show them, because I've downloaded some of the URLs from these music to show, what are we exposing our children to. So if you care to just take a peep at it, there's one called Black Rain. Just type in the word Black Rain on YouTube and you'll see. I know you will not watch the entire content. It has no obscene, but the depiction shows strictly a plot to kill another person. And it looks scary. It almost looks real. Speaks gang language. And the gangs have a particular language, a particular way they communicate. And the only way for you to develop such language, you must be involved or around persons who are speaking such language. It's really coded language so that law enforcement and other adults may not understand clearly, and the language changes from time to time depending on the situation. So that's another sign that the child is being influenced by a gang. Carries a weapon. Like I said before, because of their innocence, because of the fact that their faces are not known to the police, some of these gang leaders actually give these young children weapons to conceal in their parents' home and in places where the child has access to and knowledge of. And sometimes the child becomes so confident, they might take it upon themselves to carry a weapon with them, believing that it is part of the norm, or there is a need for them to protect themselves from possibly other rival gangs. Always have a lot of cash on them. From the time you see the child having a lot of cash that you did not give to the child, you realize that he or she is being influenced by a gang. gang members tend to use young children because they are cheaper to pay. It's cheaper to pay them than to pay the adults. And they do not, some of them will literally try to save up that money to buy a pair of sneakers or to buy something nice. And you may bounce up on that stash of cash. Staying out late at night. Came across a young man, 16, 17 years, hanging on a block in Port of Spain. And when we asked him where he lives, we followed him home. And he did not re-enter the home the normal way. We learned then that once his mother, who works very hard, once she goes to sleep at 9:30 at night, she is very much convinced that her child is inside as well, because she would have tucked him away into the bedroom after dinner. But then what he does, he goes through the window and is out on the street. Tattoos. So it's good for parents if they, just get up at night to go and check on the child, because he knows by 4:30 in the morning she's up. So by 4 a.m., 3:30 a.m., he gets back in the house and she's oblivious to the fact that he sneaks out at night. Tattoos used by the gangs. Some of the gangs have specific tattoos that they use to identify or symbolize their loyalty to a particular group, gang, or people. And some of these kids have started acquiring some of these tattoos in very secretive positions on their body. And that is because, no parent will try to bathe their 15 or 16-year-old, so they will hardly see it. But they conceal it quite well, and the only time they may come across it is if they manage to meet the child sleeping in bed and they remove the covers and they may see the tattoos. These are some of the things that has happened with him recent times. Drawing and symbols on school books, clothes, and walls. I remember when I visited that school that I mentioned earlier, there were one of the gang symbols, I do not want to call it here, that was on the back of the school chairs and the sneakers and the shirt and so on. So from there we realized that the whole gang thing is becoming sort of pop culture in the schools, because they are actually marking the desks and chairs and clothing, and even in some books, the symbols that are carried by some of the gangs. Another way you could identify that the child is being influenced by a gang. Children, some of them drop in school attendance. The gang is so attractive and so interesting for them that they actually, you actually reach by the gate, and instead of entering the school gate, the child turns around and then heads up to somebody's home, another home, or to an area where the gang is assembled, either just off the road by some trees and some bushes, and the child will spend the entire day. And just when the school bell has rung in the afternoon, the child then makes his way home, not attending school, period. Dropping grades. These are some of the, this is one thing that, should always trouble any parent once you see that drop in grades, especially if the child had good grades, because a number of kids who had good grades, you're seeing a drop in grades. Clearly, you can tell that this is a major distraction for them. Therefore, parents need to look into that, visit the schools, going to ask the teacher, check on the child's attendance, and so on, find out who he's associating himself with, start an investigation in terms of what is happening, because a drop in grades is also a signal of no longer interested in school. No longer hangs out with old friends. Once the gang has the gang influence has taken total control of the child. The child no longer hangs with even children his age, and they now move with the gang, because when it comes to gang activity, there's a level of commitment and there's a level of responsibility, and the child may now have a role to fulfill at a particular time. So hanging with the old friends is no longer an option. As pictures or videos on social media displaying gang symbols. You see a lot of this on TikTok, you see a lot of this on Instagram, and it's important to have access to some of these social media sites that your child is on, so that you will look at what he or she is displaying with his hands and the symbols that they're displaying that indicates which gang that they're supporting and belong to. And it's dangerous because there's a lot of rivalry and retaliation taking place on our nation's streets. So if the child is identified as belonging to a particular gang, other gang rivals will not hesitate to bring harm to that child regardless of his or her age. Once you see the child suddenly limits access to his or her room, you know something is wrong. Anytime the child starts limiting access to your room inside your house, inside the place that you're paying rent or mortgage for, you need to take drastic steps. And I'll tell you why. Because at this stage, the child has gone to a different level and may be hiding a weapon or drugs inside of your home. And you do not want the police, yes, inside your house. You do not want the police to obtain a search warrant because they may get information, somebody may have seen him, and then they execute a search warrant, and now you may be arrested along with your child for narcotics or an illegal firearm. So once you see this limited access to the room is always locked, and insist on more privacy, you need to, go into that mode and get into that room, search it if you need to, and search it twice. Search it when the child goes to school, to check, to ensure that there's nothing there that could, embarrass you or him or the entire family, because in some instances, once the parents or the number of adults has access to the room, it becomes a question that you may have to answer. Drastic personality changes. Children who are influenced by a gang suddenly take on a personality where they barely talk to their family members. They barely have conversations with them. They develop a sort of combustible personality. They're ready to fight. They're ready to fly off the handle. Their voice elevates quickly, and you could see that drastic personality change. They are no longer interested in being around family members. Thankfully, most of them has this, this powerful connection to their mothers. So this is where, the mothers have a opportunity to change the narrative in some of their sons' life, because most of the kids that I would have interviewed, has a very strong bond with the mothers. So they may be able to help with that drastic personality change and try to get down and investigate what is going wrong with their child. Talks in code on the phone. Once you hear this code talk on the phone, yes, the drastic personality changes could also signify a form of abuse. Talks in code on the phone, and when you hear the child talking in code on the phone, you know there's something that is taking place, and they go into a private, quiet location, and they have that conversation, and from far you can see that they become very animated. They may go out to the house in the yard so that you don't hear their conversation. And you can tell whether they are talking to a young lady or a young boy, or they are actually talking with another gang. Once you see any of these signs here, you need to start an investigation. Next slide. There's another major one too, and I have some pictures right after this to show you as well. How can you tell if your child is selling drugs? Right? Number one, he is in possession of unexplained cash. There's a high demand for, and there's always have been a high demand for drugs in university schools and other places. And with this change in the legislation making 30 grams legal, there has been an increase in illegal marijuana sale. So you see, once you see the child in possession of unexplained cash that you did not give to them, you should recognize that something is wrong. Two, has portable skills. And we have seen a lot of that for a number of young people who are actually selling drugs. Like I said, because of their innocence and their purity, and because of the fact that the police do not know them, they go undetected. Three, has devices. Those devices are grinders, and I will show you pictures of those things if you have never seen them before, so that you can identify them, and other cutting devices. Large amount of small resealable plastic bags. Once you see those large amount of bags, you know that there's something that is taking place with the child, especially in the area of drug trafficking. Can suddenly afford brand name clothing. So if you are accustomed purchasing a sneakers for him for $400, $600 for the most, and then you see him wearing one that values $2,000, $2,000, $2,300, and so on, you may not know the price of it, but another sibling or another person may be able to identify the cost of that pair of sneakers for you when they see him wearing it, and then you will know that there's something wrong. Has a shortwave, or sorry, always on the phone. People who sell drugs on a daily basis and are responsible for distribution are always on the phone because of the supply and demand for the drug itself. So there's one phone call after the next when these kids are selling drugs, and there's fast, depending on the location, the turnover is very fast. So sometimes people will call and make an order and tell them they're coming for X, Y, and Z. And as the car pulls up, there's an exchange of cash and drugs. So they're always on the phone managing that type of business. Has a shortwave radio or walkie-talkie. Because of the knowledge of how the police operates at times, some of these kids have been found in possession of shortwave radio and walkie-talkie to communicate so as not to be, caught or be identified as one of the persons who are involved in drug trafficking activities. And these walkie-talkies are heavily used for communication during those drug trafficking routine exercises. Control access. We spoke about this earlier on. Again, once you see that control access to his bedroom, you know for a fact there's something there. You mentioned that before. Is out all day and late at night. Because of the fast turnover, some of the kids will sell whole day, and because of the fact that they have the energy, they will come back in and then go back out late at night until midnight because of the demand again. The last one is scary. Known drug addicts come asking for him. There's sometimes when you have drought, a drought of the drug. There's no drug on the street at certain places. The drug addicts keep trying to look for their next hit, and they will ask around, you know, who has what and so on. And you may very well find that your son's name is being branded about as one of the suppliers, and then they will get that desperate to come to his home and ask for him very covertly. So these are some of the pictures. The metal grinder, those things are used to, you know, prepare the drug. Some persons use it for personal use. The one with the marijuana leaf with the sort of lighter next to it is the one that is the one that is used manually. And of lately, there's an electronic one. That's the one you see pieces of green leaves that are coming out from a little cylindrical hole there. So those are two of the most popular devices you will find among doctors and drug addicts. Next slide. The portable pocket scale. No, not yet. Go back one more slide. The one just before this. The slide just before this one.
Okay, Inspector, the one before was the one with the grinders.
Okay.
So
right.
this is I had skipped one.
Okay.
I'd gone past this one.
All right, so in the picture there, you're seeing a pair of scissors-like device, and it's specifically designed for, you know, treating with marijuana, cured marijuana, to be distributed for sale. And on the other side, you have some small plastic bags. These plastic bags are bought in large volumes. So once having these two devices they are not illegal, but they are indicators that the child is involved, or the person is involved in heavy marijuana distribution, because especially when you see the scissors on the bag, you realize that the resealable plastic bags and marijuana catch a very good price on the market today because of the high demand for it. Next slide.
Oh Lord, I pray and ask you for peace, oh God.
The portable pocket scale, once you see, sometimes they may have two scales, right? And the portable pocket scales is a way that, because some of the persons want to ensure that they get value for money. So even if they are they are not pleased with that. So the portable pocket scale ensures the person purchasing that he is getting his value for money. And it also helps the dealer to ensure that he is not giving away his product at a price that is far less than what he is giving to the clients. The mattress is something that you have to pay attention to, because this is a spring mattress, and these are packets that are sealed in the mattress that was found by law enforcement. And the thing about it is that if you are not sure what you're looking for or how to look for it, this will go concealed for years. Sometimes you have to flip the mattress some of these mattresses are actually torn apart and then resealed with a similar material using Velcro, right? And it's done very skillfully in that the child takes a picture of the mattress that they have, and they will share to the dealer. He will then have that made similar material with the Velcro to ensure that it's not easily noticeable, and then all the contraband is hidden very skillfully. How can you tell if your child is sexually active? And you know, this is a lot for the both male and female. She demands more privacy. Once you see a female child, and let me tell you this, that the act, the Anti-Gang Act and the Children's Act dictates that a child is someone who has not yet attained the age of 18. So you're 17 years old, you're still a child. So we start with, she demands more privacy. Anytime you see the child, you know, demanding more privacy, the experts have explained that could be a sign that you should, you know, look for as it relates to the sexual active part. You go to their search engine and you realize searching things like birth control pills. The code changes. They start looking at porn sites. Once you start looking at a porn site in the home, especially when everybody is using the same Wi-Fi system, what happens is that from the time you go onto your normal Google, you will see porn sites advertisement coming up on your system. You realize that the child or someone in the home has started in looking at porn sites. Again, grades drop at school because now the child has been distracted by whatever sexual activity that he has now shown interest in. You may question them and they will avoid your questions. Once you see them start avoiding your questions, you realize that something's wrong. You need to be suspicious and you need to dig more and investigate more and continue to ask more questions. They guard their cell phone as though it is Fort Knox. Right? They have both locks for every level of the cell phone. So they might have a screen lock and they will also have a lock for the WhatsApp and a lock for the IG. Once you see these things, they have information on the phone or communication on the phone that they need to guard. And this is something that you need to address aggressively, because we have come across children, young female children, with pictures of themselves that they have been sending to male adults who they do not recognize are male adults, because some of these adults have actually given the impression that they are children. And it's a technique they use to lower girls into this position where they take nude pictures of themselves, their private parts, their innocent parts, and send it out on Instagram. Avoid phone conversation when you are present. This is another serious issue. They do not want you hearing what they are talking about. So once the phone rings, you know, they may put it on silent and walk away and go into a secluded place and talk very low about whatever it is that they're involved in. Makes frivolous excuse for coming home late from school. Yes, parents will definitely have to invest, Ms. Marjorie, in a lot of technology and understand how it works, because these kids are, it's almost innate in them in terms of how they manipulate the use of technology. They are really, really good. And that is why it's important to, give them an opportunity to develop in those areas if they are really good in tech, because once they go into that other area, it's difficult to come back. And for the girls, it's even harder, especially if they start having children at a teenage. There's a major setback. And this next point here of making frivolous excuse for coming on late from school is one of the reasons that should concern anybody. Followed by the next one, contraceptives go missing. Once you see contraceptives go missing, you realize that the child, has started an activity. And last but not least, once you realize that the child has developed sexual health problems, you know that they are engaged in an activity that they are not ready for. Next slide. This is a common thing, and it's important to be addressed immediately because it really affects the children, their psyche a lot, and they have, some of them have, reached a stage that they want to take their own lives. So once you see the child come home with bruises and swellings, you should recognize that your child is being bullied at school. And you need to take the time off and get to the school and get to the bottom of it. Right? Because if you do not take action or show interest that you are concerned about the child's safety, the child will obviously be felt that he is alone in the situation, and there are many ways that they will act out. Another sign that they are being bullied: books and clothing damaged or destroyed. Right? You can tell that the child is being targeted and being attacked at the school. No longer wants to return to school. Once you see that, you know that there's something going on in the school that you need to address. Avoid school activities, loses focus in class, struggles with homework, conceals a weapon. This is when it gets serious. Anytime you see the child takes up a weapon and conceals the weapon, it is because he is fed up, he or she is fed up, and is now ready to take on his abusers or attackers in a way that he or she believes that they will get justice because they have complained. You, the parent, have seen their injuries and nothing has been done. So he or she is now going to take action in their own hands. Isolates themselves, right? His child just withdraws from everybody. And what happens, I spoke to one or two of them, they're asking themselves several questions and they're trying to work out how they're going to deal with it because there's no justice for them. Stays in safe places during break. There are some parents who I know for a fact, because of the situation that exists with their children, they actually have to continue to send them to school because they have to work and they have no one to stay with the child at home, and they are able to make time to go to see what is taking place in the school. So the child continues to dodge the bullet until that could happen. So the child may stay close to the teacher. They may hide in safe places during the break. They might stay close to the guard booth in case they are attacked. They may stay with other children who may be able to protect them. But it's a very stressful, day at school for a child to survive when they are going through the bullying at school each and every day. Bullying also affects a child's sleep. The child has trouble sleeping at night because the abuse plays on the mind and the psyche so much that they cannot fall asleep at night. And the other one is very scary. They contemplate suicide if there's no redress. Children who are bullied at school continuously and get no redress or no help or no support feel, that's the end of the world, and the next thing they think about doing is committing suicide. How can you tell if your child is being sexually abused? When I was at the Child Protection Unit, I came across several instances, and in interviewing the child, you realize that some parents would have missed a number of signs that they could have told that the child was being groomed and eventually sexually abused. Here are some. Unexplained gifts. Abusers tend to try to give children gifts so that they will not squeal on them, or they will continue to come back into the sexual abusive situation. You may find the child has this is there are some children who will find a much friendship in a much older person, like a grandparent, and nothing is wrong with that. But when it becomes a stranger, someone who the child does not know, you want to be certain that that friendship is more of a mentorship and not something that is going on the road of being sexually abused. And this is for both boys and girls. Extremely secretive about who they are talking to online or on the phone. Using sexual language that you never use in their presence. Persons who are sexually abusing a child tend to slip up in this area, and then the child picks up the language and they innocently will speak it out at home. So once you hear them, you need to investigate where did they hear that from. And most of the times they will tell you, no, they hear it on television, but please do not accept that. Still investigate. The child becomes withdrawn. The child makes plans to run away from home. And we have seen this many times where a number of young girls, 13, 14, 15, they have become somewhat attracted to the abuser. They do not realize that they are victims, and they make plans with the abuser to run away from home. And it is important. I know parents are busy, especially mothers, especially at this time preparing for the festive season. But it's also good to, check the children on the clothes stack, because sometimes they are packing right under your nose and you don't realize it until they go missing, and you realize that they're missing clothes and sneakers because they pack very quietly and then they just disappear. See them searching social media sites for an older person. That's something that you should be concerned about, because they may already be in a relationship and they're trying to find out more about that person by searching the site. Spending more time alone online. Now, this is not necessarily one, but because a lot of children, a lot of kids actually spend time alone online. They stay in their room in their quiet time and they will look at social media. But all the same, do not take it for granted. Still check and see what is going on with them. Becomes hostile to parents. You find a lot of young girls become extremely hostile to their mothers, because the mothers are so experienced and so sensitive to the child. They actually step into the situation. Some a bit too aggressive. The child becomes hostile and explodes and responds sometimes in a very violent manner towards the parent. Next slide. So this brings on somewhat of an abrupt end to the presentation, and I'm always open and here to accept or respond to any questions that any of the listening audience may have. And I want to thank you for allowing me to take up so much of your time this afternoon.
Inspector Stanley, you said you took up so much of our time, but we value the time you spend with us. You always provide such rich and useful information. And I just want to look back at some of the things or remind us of some of the things that you said this evening or some of the things that you drew our attention to. First of all, as you began to speak about some of the things that we as parents should do, it made me understand that sometimes we are attacking our own children. When we speak about the co-workers in their presence, when we allow them to have their own way, and you give us a number of pointers as to how parents really should operate in front of their children or in the presence of their children. So I took a note here. I said parents can attack their children unknowingly, because sometimes some of the things that we do and say, we really don't, it's not directed to them, but they are learning from what they see. Then you spoke about the gangs and how we should find out, how we should understand if they are being influenced, if they've been influenced by gangs. And then you went into helping us to understand if they're sexually active and they've been bullied, if they're being sexually abused, and if they are actually selling drugs. Inspector, this is so rich and this is so much information. And I'm truly sorry that we only had 34 persons logged on this evening, because this is something that the entire nation should hear. And I'm wondering if the parent teachers associations and all the churches and anybody who has an influence on children should not be exposed to this. This should be shared widely. Akisha, what do you have to say? How has it impacted you?
Oh yes, actually from the very get-go, when you talk about, having various conversations in the presence of children, I really started to think,
Yes.
because, children don't have that maturity to be able to decipher, as adults, we can pretend very well. Although you see all of these bad things in front of the person's face, you will act normal. But children don't do that. Children, would listen and they would respond appropriately. So it's really important for adults, Sometimes we don't see harm in our behavior, but as we heard here this evening, it can be harmful to our children, even us. The other factors, I mean, some of them I knew and could appreciate, and some I knew to me, that children are under these type of attacks. I think it's really important for us to really not just hear it for ourselves, but make sure we really share this recording, because there are persons out there who just don't know, who don't have the detail, who weren't exposed to detail that we were just exposed to. So I think it's really important that we share with other persons as well.
Yes, and I was saying to myself at one point, well, my children are grown, but I have grandchildren. And then the nation in which I reside has children. And as an adult and a responsible adult, I have to be concerned about every single child in this nation. So, Inspector, someone is asking when the recording is going to be made available. Akisha, I would like you to share it with me, because I experienced a little difficulty earlier on with the recording, but this is something that we need to spread far and wide. And to our attendees, when we're having these types of sessions, please share far and wide so that our numbers would be greater, so more persons would understand what's happening. Because we're moving about minding our own business, and we are not taking into consideration the fact that there is a war against our children. They are under attack. And when our children are under attack, we are going to reap the whirlwind, because they will turn around and attack us. Now, our own children might not attack us, but somebody else's child might. And for the good of the children themselves, we need to protect them. We can't be like Mother Duck and just send them out and say quack, quack, quack in the evening and expect them to come back. We have to be more responsible. Yes, but I'm sure that participants will have questions for Inspector. So if you have questions, I hand to Akisha to manage the questions.
All right. So if there aren't any questions at this time, I'll just go on to some points for us to note, some points for us to remember as it pertains to the discussion we're just having. Our children are vulnerable. We have to remember that our children are vulnerable. We must protect them. And this is only one way in which we can protect our children, by putting the information out there. Of course, we can act with the information that we have to ensure that we protect our children. We must be vigilant. We must know what our children are doing, know who our children are hanging out with. We need to know more about what our children, who our children are, to ensure that we are being vigilant in being parents and grandparents and whatever position you hold in a child's life. Do not ignore the signals. We were privy to some signs and signals a while ago. Don't ignore them. When you see them, probe them, investigate them, see what's going on. Ensure that your children are not being taken down a wrong path by peers or other persons. Reevaluate our level of trust. Children can pretend they are wise. If you think your child is not wise and your child don't know what's going on, then you need to think again. And they have their peers who are smart as well in their own little way, and they will try to outsmart you. You see, oftentimes you see some children act so nice and pleasant in front of their parents, and behind their parents' back, you're not sure if that's the same nice sweet child that you sent to school in the morning. So be vigilant, reevaluate the trust levels that you have. Make sure that that child really deserves the trust that you are giving that child. And always, always, always remember, Jesus is the friend of a wounded heart. Before all else
Akisha,
fails.
yes, let me interrupt you a bit.
Yes.
As you were speaking, I thought about my own childhood,
Mhm.
my teenage years, and I'm saying that there's some things I did that my parents never knew about. I wonder if there's anybody on this platform this evening whose parents knew about everything they did. Akisha, you?
I don't think my parents knew everything I did, but they behaved like they had eyes that followed you around.
Mhm.
So when they looked at you, I think they would discover anything that you did wrong. So because of that, you did nothing wrong.
Yes. So Debbie said no, they didn't. And
Yeah.
I remember one of my children saying, they don't know how I find out, but I know everything. But I used to search bags and so on, eh? And I remember one of my daughters came home with a fragrance one day. And I said, where did you get that perfume? She said, what perfume? So I looked in the bag and I realized it was one of my little bottles of perfume that I had never used. I had a set of about 5 little bottles and she took one. But we have to really be sharp and attentive, but some things slip through. But those times were easier times. It is terrible now out there. So we have to be more vigilant.
Exactly.
We really have to be more vigilant.
And there are so many single parents.
Yes, Marge, go ahead. Yes.
So many single parents. My heart breaks. How do they negotiate taking care of their needs and having to be detective and pay attention, and it's consuming.
One of the things,
frightening.
yeah. Inspector spoke about the closing up of the bedroom. Well, I heard about a parent who said she took off the bedroom door. But I have not taken off the bedroom doors, but I have the keys for the bedroom doors. I have them and I enter any bedroom in my house when I want to.
My husband at one time with the kids would eat and put all the stuff under the bed. He would go in and flip the mattress when he wants and dare anybody to complain, but to clean it up. And the rule was, this is not your house. You're not paying rent. You can't lock the door. And at one time, I thought that was a little severe until I realized they were true to it, because you had to be the strong influence in your home. You had to be the gangster in your home.
Yes, Marjorie, I agree with you. This morning I went in to check on where you know how boys keep their bedrooms, and I went in to check on it, and I left the door open, and the lights on and so on. And my grandson, when I walked away, he closed the door. So I went back and I said, "No, this is my door. I opened it. Kind of leave it open." But he didn't want me to see all the empty water bottles and so on that he had in there, and
Yes.
all the spoons that I've been looking
Oh,
for.
spoons
Okay.
with the spoons, the cutlery, they were under the bed.
Yes.
They
But
weren't
Rebecca
supposed
has
to
a
be in
question.
the house or in
Go
the
ahead.
bedroom.
Didn't hear you, Marjorie. Okay, Rebecca has a question. She said earlier, Inspector, you mentioned not liking the idea of expulsion, and I think you spoke to it. What do you think of the idea of sending them to Milat, as was shared recently on the news?
I think sending them to Milat is also an excellent choice, but for me, I would have preferred that they have what you call an evaluation or a risk assessment tool for the child before you send them to Milat. Just like that, they may continue with their action. So there needs to be sometimes some psychosocial intervention before you put them into any new program. But that tool must come first, especially when that problem arises. But I like the Milat idea, and I'm strongly against expulsion. I've never been expelled, but based on what I have experienced with some of the expelled students and the conversations I would have had with them, I realized that, in some ways, the system would have given up on them by, entering into the expulsion process. But I support the Milat concept, just, some psychosocial assessment and evaluation before, you take them into that new program.
Be ready.
Good night.
Right? Go ahead.
Pleasant good night, everyone.
Yes, Darren. Good
Yes,
to
this
see you,
is Darren.
Yes.
Nice to be here after so long. Inspector, good night, sir. Well, I joined a little late, but based on what I heard so far, based on what I hear, I can't see hear or heard someone. So far, I am in agreement with everything. However, sending them to Milat is a good idea, but we have to remember, I find to me parents are too laid back when coming to their children these days, and they are very much laid back. Example, in my time in going to school, I could have never ever hit and sabak or do anything of the above in school, and they are doing it now and they are getting away with it. And I felt so ashamed of what happened in Cumbria with that young girl the other day, and I had the pleasure of meeting her today. And you can actually see where children these days, parents, we need to be more involved and talk to these kids and show them the right thing. Stop sitting down and discussing big people thing in front of your children. Children will always be children. Now, this thing with the internet and the watching what going on and peer pressure and all that, we all know about those things. But you see, the parent is the one who have to put down their foot. We may tell a child, well, yeah, don't take no lash from nobody in school. Okay, cool, fine, we understand that. But also tell them the consequences of lashing back somebody. tell the teacher, the world is changing, but we as parents have to put down our foot on the children and them and let them know what time of day it is. You go into a child bag, you see the marijuana grinder and all that, or what the case may be. Okay, cool, fine. But suppose that that child parent is a smoker and all those things, and to he is a normal thing, but no one sit down to talk with him. How much of those children, parents that sit down as a mentor to them and talk with them? Not much of them does. And the little, and those who parents sit down and talk with them is getting peer pressure by those in the classroom. I may be wrong in saying this, but it does happen. So people, we all need to take stock of our children and them, find out, be more involved in what is going on with them. Please. And this is a very nice platform. There are parents inside here who don't want to talk, always speak up. Speak up and let us get this thing out in the open, because as I told someone today, not until it hit home to a minister or somebody it happened to, and then now they will change policy and say this can happen and that can happen, we could nip it in the bud from now. Thank you all very much for the time. I'll be listening in still. Thank you, Inspector. Miss Bob, thank you.
You're welcome, Darren.
Yeah, good night, Miss Bob. Miss Ward.
Yes, go ahead, Sherilyn.
Yeah,
Just before, I'm seeing two hands that has been up for a little bit. If we
yes.
can just take them a little bit and we'll come back to you.
And I think Sharon was about to speak earlier.
Joyce and Janet. So one of you can proceed, and then we'll come back to Sherilyn after.
All right.
And the other person?
Good evening. This is Janet. Good evening. When the inspector was talking this section on bullying, and he talked about a concealed weapon. As a parent, I had that unfortunate experience. One of my sons at secondary school was being bullied, and I never knew. I did not know. I missed a small knife. I thought it had fallen into the garbage or something. But one day, now I was a teacher, and there was a teacher teaching at the school who I worked with at a primary school before. And one afternoon I was home, and he drove into my yard with one of my sons. With a knife, he brought the knife. My son was being bullied at school. He never said anything at home. I never observed anything, but he went to school with the knife. And that particular day when he was being beaten, he drew the knife. And the teacher was in the area. He did not take him to the principal. He brought him home to me with the knife. And I always give God thanks for that teacher and for the opportunity to be able to work with my son. Today, my son is a valued member of society. Actually, he's a teacher. He is a teacher at this point. I don't know how I missed it. Maybe I was too busy with my job. I missed it. After that, I tried to be more vigilant. Okay, that's one. The Milat situation, I agree with the inspector when he says an evaluation must be done, should be done, in order to know where these children are and what really should be done with them. But also I want to ask a question because I hope, I don't know if I'm mistaken, but I thought Milot was a place where only males went. If so, what are the plans for our female students? Because we have a lot of females who are becoming delinquent, who are being suspended and possibly expelled. Where do they go? What happens to them? They are also a concern for me. So those are just the two little points I would like to share.
Okay, good night. I'm Joyce. I tend to agree. I have 2 points with the inspector with the evaluation because what I've noticed with kids, long time punishment used to work, but children like they enjoy punishment now. So if you say, okay, you are not going to have this, it does not matter to them anymore. They will go through the duration of it and it's come like nothing. So we have to be so careful and so particular, and we have to be able to sum up the long time strictness works, and sometimes it works against us. So we have to be very, very careful and balancing it. You would know because it's a small children before they start to go to school or sometimes in preschool, they realize that punishment, okay, they have already reached it, okay. And my number 2 point, I want to ask the inspector, if you have a child and you realize the child is being have so many characteristics that you would have put out there, like becoming rude and disrespectful and stuff, and you would, as a parent, decide to say, well, is you're blaming yourself for it. So in return, you want to make up for it. So then you would give them maybe more money, give them more privileges to go out because you think, okay, I'm being too strict. So I'll give them more privilege to go out, I'll give them more money, but they come now like if they are using you without change. Where what is the parent next step towards that? That's my question.
Good night. Hello,
Good
are you
evening.
hearing me?
Yes, we
Yes,
are.
Sharon here. So I agree with Inspector with the psychosocial assessment, but when you look at today's society, most of us fail our children. I'll tell you why. I'm looking at the police, I'm looking at the citizen, I'm looking at the teachers. Recently, I was in Scarborough and I observed that there are a group of children always hanging out by the market on the other side of the market. I think there's a big tree there. And those children will be there in the afternoon. Apparently, some of them just be having sex right there in front of people. People right there waiting for the bus and people. And I call the Scarborough police station. I called community police and I asked them, I said, you all please do something about these children because we are losing our children. That wasn't all. I called different people who I know would be influential in getting those children off the streets on afternoons. What I said to one of the officers, I said, when I used to go to secondary school on a Friday afternoon, children used to hang out in Scarborough and the police used to come in town and ensure that everybody get into a taxi and go home. And if we start to mind, let child protection be everybody business, all our business, I think it would be different. That is one point. The other thing is that some parents, they become parents even before they were mature, even before they become adults, and they don't even know how to parent. That is one thing. The other thing is that look at some of the homes that these children go live in. The parents cursing obscene language, they're getting up from their bed, they're doing what they want to get up from their bed. If I feel to go to school, I go to school. If I don't feel to go to school, I don't go. There's nobody to tell me what to do. As Joan said, she smelled the perfume and she searched the bag. I used to be a police too. I'm not a police in real, but I used to be the mommy police. I searching your smelling your fingers, smelling your shirt colors to find out if you're smoking marijuana, smell them. And my son used to be like, Mommy, why you treating me like that? I'm not that person. But no, I'm minding my business. And it's time for us to mind our business, and even the children in our society. Let's start minding their business. I just want to share two things with you all. Today I went to Roxborough Secondary School, and I saw a young girl that I am working with. She's in first form, sitting down on a boy's lap with her cell phone, and they're looking and they're smiling. I went up to him and I went up to her, I said, get off immediately. Give back the person their cell phone. And he said, well, it's my classmate. And you go and you give back that person that cell phone immediately. And I stood there and I wait. Long time, that's how parents used to operate. That's how people used to operate. There are things that I did. And I remember by the time I reached home, somebody would have told my parents, this is what I did. And you know what? They corrected me. And that is something that we no longer do. We allow the children to do what they want. And now they come home to roost is a problem for us. So now I'm just asking every one of us, let's make child protection all of us business. Don't mind me and I do with them parents. Let me stop do that. And let us tell the children what you are doing is wrong. That's just my point tonight.
Sherilyn, you still have your point?
Yeah, good night, everyone. As parents, we need to set boundaries. And I think that's the problem that we are facing today. We need to set boundaries with our children. Many parents want to be friends with their children. Friend, and they don't want to be a parent. There is a line between friend and parent. So children need to know their boundaries, and parents need to set those boundaries. I think many a times, that is why children behave the way that they behave. They're not no bad children, you know. I never believe that there's a bad child. Like some people say the child bad. The child isn't bad. The parent exhibits certain behaviors among that child, and that child play out what the whatever the parent is doing and saying. Like long ago, when an adult and an adult having a conversation, we as children, we couldn't go and stand up and listen to those conversations. Would they just give you an eye and you understood what they were saying? Today, I have witnessed where children having a conversation, me and an adult talking and a child coming in, and the child having a conversation as normal, and that is like normal with parents. And I think if parents should really take up their responsibility that God has placed within them, that is why the Bible says, train up a child in the way that he or she should go, that when he or she is old, they will not depart from it. I think if we do what God asks us, we will not have any delinquent children. We will have loving children, and children need to grow up into an environment where there is a happy family, where there is love. Our children are grown now, but when our children were young, we were doing everything with our children. If they had sports, if they had this, if they had that, we were always there. On a Sunday, we take them on a picnic. So we were always involved in the children's life. If something was happening with our children, it was very easy for them to come and say, Mommy and Daddy, this is happening. And we would have had family conference with our children, sit with our children, talk, find out what is happening. If we do something to hurt their feelings, we would have had family conference, and they would have come and say, Mommy and Daddy, you said something and you hurt my feeling. And we as parents, we were big enough to say, look, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it that way, but I am sorry. And even today, we have such a great relationship with our children. And I think if parents should really let the God factor be a part of their children's life, we're gonna have great children. Today, what is happening is that children making children. And that is why we have such a breakdown in society. I have only one comment to make to the inspector, is that we have the law now that we cannot discipline our children. So if our children start cursing and being disrespectful, and we try to correct our children, they're coming to lock us up. Right? So I think they need to change that law. I know long time, yes, parents might have been a little abusive to their children, but many of us didn't die from it. But we have to do things differently, in a different method, where we're going to be able to dialogue and talk with our children and be there for our children. We as a society, we have to look out for each other's children. So gone are the days when we say, that is her child. I can tell that child anything, because parents right now is cursing you if you correct their children. So where are we at this moment? Because if parents is doing it, what then? Because the children are seeing it, and the children say, you can't tell me nothing, because you can't want to tell my mother nothing or my father nothing, because the mother and father is joining with the children. So we have to look at this thing in a broad spectrum, in trying to find ways and means of meeting our young people, because we are losing our young people. We are losing them really fast, because some of them getting into drugs and all other things. Another point is that children leave home, parents don't know where they're going and stuff like that. I think if we have good relationships with our children, we will know where our children are, where they're going, who their friends are. So, let's kind of rally around our children. Let's look out for each other's children. And I think if we do that, things gonna get a little better.
I just want to jump in with Sherilyn. Parents are allowed to discipline their children, to apply corporal punishment. Only the parents. And you have to be careful how you apply the corporal punishment. For instance, if you should beat your child and there is blood or bruise or anything that hurt the child, that is physical abuse, then the police would come in, and sometimes Children's Authority would also step in. So it's not wrong, it's not a charge if a parent discipline the child. The word is parent. So a parent could discipline the child. I think the principal also could discipline the child, but nobody else. No uncle, and long time your uncle would reach you and beat you, and we don't have that anymore. The parents could discipline the child using physical, using like beating the child.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yes, and the Bible says that if you beat the child, he wouldn't die. The Bible says that. Sometimes people say discipline, when they say train up the child in the way you should go, and the rod of correction, some people say, oh, it's not physical. It is physical, because the same Bible says if you beat the child, he will not die. The Bible says it. All right, Keisha, back to you. I just needed to put in that little thing there.
So, Grace, you can go ahead, make your comment. Amazing, Grace.
Okay.
All right. So
Hi,
I know.
Pleasant, good night.
Yes, go ahead. Yes, I'm hearing you.
Hi. Pleasant, good night. I think Cheryl would have touched on a few pointers that I wanted to share before, while my hand was raised. She would have elaborated on some of the pointers. But one thing I want to say that wasn't mentioned is that the society today has significantly changed in terms of the home and the financial structure of the home. And my mother recently shared something with me, and it's so ironic that I'm on this platform tonight and you're talking about children and children being bullied and stuff like that, and some of our parents failing our children. And it just speaks volume, because a simple thing as making sure that your child is fed on a morning before he or she goes to school my mother lives in an area that there's a secondary school very close by. And what did she observe is that every morning, the line to go to, there's like a canteen outside the school gates. And she says every morning she cannot understand why it is the lines are so long every morning. She said normally, back in the day, you will get the lines being long like a break time or a lunch time. But she said what she observed within the last 2 or 3 years is that the morning there's very long line. And that speaks volume because it means that the parents, which is myself, because I'm a parent now as well, we are failing our children in terms of some of the basic principles that we will instill in them, like, having a meal at home with the family, or even if it is you can't have a meal at home with the family, but to know that meal is prepared for the child before he goes to school, so that when he goes to school, his mind is set with good nutrients in terms of a meal to get the day started, right? And that's one. And two, there's a scripture that said that in the final days we become lovers of ourselves. And that scripture is very defining in society today. And the reason being is because, as some of persons would have lamented tonight, you cannot speak to another person's child. If something is wrong, we know back then, even in my day, I'm not that old, but in my time, I know persons could have corrected you and your parents would not have said anything. Your parents would have stood in the gap with the other parents and said, yes, you were doing something wrong and that's why you had to be corrected. And I was not there. And this person standing in the gap to me. But the society today is a society where we so love ourselves and we so love the image that we want to present to our children as being friends with our children, that we fail to stand in the gap with other parents in terms of correcting our child. And this just goes to show, because I would have had an incident recently where at a parents meeting, at a PTA meeting, a child would have done something and the police got involved. And when the school called to find out, well, where the child was, because the child actually ran away from school, the parents said that the child is at home. And the principal and everybody was baffled because the school panicked looking for this child. The police got involved looking for the child. And before the parent contact the school to find out, okay, why the child is home this hour of the day, no one said anything. So it just goes to show that us as parents, yes, in some cases we are failing our children because we're not preparing that the role of what a family is supposed to be and the role of how it is we are supposed to interact with others in society. It's from a place of self-love and not self-love to develop the society, self-love to just
Selfish.
Be selfish. So I'm not too sure if it is the information shared tonight could be exhibited in a sense where it could be taken to the PTA meetings, or if it could take to the community centers and stuff like that, because things like this are needed. Because when it is you have a situation where your child feels as though the mother is their friend, and a friend in a sense that not a friend to come and talk and tell that you're being bullied because you're not joining a gang, but a friend in the sense that your mother will keep your secrets, or your father wouldn't go and tell and report you to the police. Some children will continue to behave the way they behave because they're not being penalized at home. And in some cases, because of the technology, the environment that we are in now with the different set of technology, you find that there are parents who are going the extra mile to make sure that the children are well taken care of, to make sure that the child are well fed, lacking nothing. And the cliche statement that goes to say you make the child but you don't make the mind, sometimes that gets in the way as well, because sometimes these children embarrass the parents. There are parents who are working 2 and 3 jobs just to maintain the lifestyle that, okay, I didn't have this for myself and I want better for my children, and then yet to know that your child going and join a gang to earn extra money that the child doesn't even need. So there are so many different avenues and there are so different scenarios that could be played out. But what thing I want to make sure that is being played out in the society now is that this type of information that is shared is not just shared on these type of platforms, because really and truly you realize that there are certain things that we as individuals are failing ourselves and failing our future generation. And I would just want to thank you all for sharing this information tonight, because it's really needed in society today.
And we want to thank you for your comments and everyone who would have made a comment and a contribution this evening. We would have had some really good questions and comments coming out of the discussion. But once again, I want to thank Inspector Stanley for being here with us. And I would like to invite him once again to just wrap us up. I know he would have spoken about a lot already, but give us something that we can take away from this discussion that we can share with someone else, that we may be able to help somebody else cope through a situation where, you know, our children are under attack.
One of the things we must keep in mind, well, first of all, thank you for giving me the second round. One of the things we must keep in mind is an old saying, it takes a community to raise a child.
Right.
That community means, you know, all the teachers. I listened to, I think it's Miss Sherilyn talking about, you know, intervention when you see something taking place with children. Do not, you know, turn a blind eye to it. Because one of the things I experienced 10 years ago, and I want you all to keep this in your mind. There was a parent, just like some of you all in this chat here, who took her time and raised her only son. And this is why I'm inspired. I never knew her personally, but the child did well and was working TSTT. Another parent who didn't do a good job at all went to school with that same child. And when they saw the child, Lyman at that time was a place called 51 Degrees. He and his new friends attacked the child. Took the child to a location where they forced the child. Well, it was not child at that stage. I'll just call him a child, my bad. They were both age 22. Took the child to Arima, make him take out money from his fire service, and then eventually kill the woman only child. And that stayed with me. That is one crime that stayed with me forever because, you know, the woman started, she was asking God, you know, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong to deserve this? You know, and eventually the mother left her job as well and migrated because she couldn't live in Trinidad. You see, the thing about it, the intervention you make today will not just impact on your children, but it will save the lives of other children. So that intervention that Ms. Sherilyn did, I think that is one of the ways to go. We have to go back to the way where we don't turn a blind eye to things that we know are wrong that could have severe consequences and take on the responsibilities as adults of this nation to ensure our children do not continue along the road of self-destruction.
Wow, very, very, very true. You know, I was wondering, should we not have mandatory parenting, some type of program for all parents to just ensure, because, you know, you become a parent and sometimes we are so lost. You don't know how to maneuver, how to get everything done, and everybody just expect you to be this awesome parent. But something can possibly be done where parents, it's mandatory that each parent, every time you become a parent, that you must have some type of, at least a short session telling you this is your role and responsibilities, and then we can hold people accountable, because some parents probably just don't know.
They don't know.
Yeah. But I really enjoy this this program this evening, and I want to thank you again, Inspector, and everybody else who would have participated in today's session. Remember, you can find our recordings on YouTube and on Facebook. Just look for Hope and Action Network, and there you're going to find it. Next week, we are going to look at the topic teen dating violence, another very interesting topic that have an impact on our children again. So I ask that you join with us again, that you share our login information so somebody else might be able to join our session and be impacted by the information that's being circulated through Hope and Action Network, a friend of a wounded heart.
Yes, Keisha, I want parents to join us and teenagers next week, because you know they're going to dress them up to go to the Christmas parties and dinners and all kinds of activities, and sometimes they get into trouble. So we want parents and teenagers and everybody, guardians, join us next week and hear some of the things that we will share with you.
Right. And as we come to a close in today's program, I just would like to pray so that we can have a pleasant night after all we would have discussed. So please join me as we pray. Heavenly Father, Lord, I want to thank you for this evening. And I thank you for this opportunity where you would have allowed us to come join on this platform to hear something very interesting, hear something that's very current as well, something that can have a negative impact on our children and our future society. Lord, we want to thank you for the work that Inspector Sandy is doing. I pray that you will continue to be with him, that you continue to guide him and guide his steps to ensure that he continue to do a positive work for Trinidad and Tobago. Lord, we would have seen him as working with children, and now he's doing another task, and both very impactful positions. And so, Father, I pray that you just bless his ministry, bless what he is doing and his team. Lord, I pray for this program as well. We are here every Wednesday trying to build a better society in our own little way. And so I pray that you continue to bless this program and everyone who participates and log in and view and are part of this session as well, dear Lord. Bless us all as we go to our respective beds tonight. Help us to have a good night rest and a good and productive day tomorrow. Bless and keep us is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so
Amen.
have a blessed and a good night, everybody.
Good night to all.
Good night, everyone. Thanks, Inspector.
Good night,
Everyone.
Thank you.
good night, everyone.
Good night. Good
Night,
night.
everyone.
All right, Teresa. Good night.